welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rieta, and today I'm here with Katerina Vujić, right?
Vujić. Yes.
All right. I told her I was probably going to mess it up, so guys, forgive me. I did my best. But Katerina, tell us how you deal when the shit gets real, or just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Yeah.
My name is Katerina. I'm a certified holistic health coach, and I help frustrated high achievers deal with their chronic symptoms. And I do that through a holistic, identity-centric approach to help them feel like themselves again.
Well, I love that. I love that your main purpose is to get people feeling like themselves again, which I think is what most people probably want.
That's the idea. And that was born out of my own chronic illness experience, which was very, very challenging and unexpected. And I'll dive right into that if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, take us on your journey of dealing with chronic illness.
Okay. So everything started for me. I was always a healthy child. And then one day, distinctly, in 2015, so I was a junior in college at that time, and it was the summer. I was in Croatia visiting family, which I was lucky enough to do, but it wasn't abnormal for me to be there and, be eating the food and enjoying the ocean and all that.
Sounds amazing.
It is. It's my favorite place in the world, but I'm a little biased.
Understandably.
Mm-hmm. But while I was enjoying myself there, I all of a sudden had very severe stomach pain and diarrhea, and was basically stuck on the toilet for a day. And it was awful, and I didn't know what was happening. The first thought is, maybe food poisoning, something like that. But like I said, I'd been there almost every year of my life, and it would be strange if the things I'd always eaten had affected me all of a sudden. Although possible, of course. But the clarifying point was that night when I went to go to sleep, I essentially didn't. I was awake like 15 to 25 times throughout the night. I felt like I was awake all night because it was just constant waking up. I had really light sleep and woke up the next morning and had my first episode of vertigo, which was absolutely terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
I'd never experienced anything like it before. Certainly when you're, a kid and playing, you get moments of dizziness because you're spinning around or hula hooping or whatever, but this is very different from that. I was rolling over in my bed and the whole room, I'm looking at the ceiling, the whole room is spinning and shifting around me. That's what I was visually experiencing. And obviously I lost balance and I was freaked out. I didn't know what was happening. Eventually slowed my movements because I was gathering that was inducing it and causing it to worsen. So I moved very slowly. My hands are on the walls, I'm focusing on my feet on the floor to just navigate. And it was absolutely terrifying. Never experienced anything like it. And with that, I had extremely low energy, severe fatigue, and brain fog, which I'd never experienced before. I couldn't think clearly either. And I don't just mean like, you get a bad night's sleep and the next day you're kind of fuzzy. is more like you can't piece together your thoughts at all. Like a cohesive sentence, you can't put it together. It was unbelievably frustrating. And that was the start of everything for me. And at that point, those were the initial experiences, but I later accumulated over the years various other things, including neck pain and shoulder tension, lower back pain. I got different diagnoses like SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, Lyme disease, different other infections like recurrent yeast infections, anxiety, then panic attacks because of what I was experiencing, depression because of what I was experiencing. And I'd never been an overly, anxious, or I'd never been depressed before. I'd never had panic attacks before. It was very, very jarring. And that led me to lead an investigation into my own body and my own health. And it was not an easy one, unfortunately. I started by seeing my PCP at the time, who was wonderful. And I later realized an anomaly. She was wonderful because she listened to me. She trusted in what I was saying, what I was telling her I was experiencing, um, and did her best to point me in the right direction of the right specialist or things that she thought would help, maybe meditation or something like that, a low FODMAP diet. But she wasn't really equipped to help me as wonderful as she was, even though she treated me as a human being and as a person. She wasn't equipped in a clinical sense. And I ended up seeing so many neurologists and gastroenterologists and rheumatologists and whatever you can name. I've pretty much seen it and seen more than one to get multiple opinions. And I was floored by envision at a time where you feel like you don't know who you are because of what you're experiencing. You're so afraid. Your mental state is completely changed because your physical state's completely changed. I didn't have control over my body. I lost trust in my body for the first time in my life. And I was in my 20s. This was not what I was expecting was going to be happening in my 20s. And none of my friends, as wonderful and well-meaning as they are, were going through that or anything like that. They didn't know what to say, what to do to help. And I'm watching also, my friends in their 20s after graduating college, they're exploring their careers, they're traveling, they're hanging out with friends, they're doing, fun hobbies, whatever. And I'm more or less stuck in my apartment. I make myself go to work because I have to. I'm doing my best at my job, but I'm afraid of not doing my best and getting fired because of how poorly I'm feeling. And I don't know how I'm going to get better. So all this is happening, and all the specialists that I'm seeing are unfortunately not being helpful. And I was so shocked by that and so disappointed and lost, really, really lost. It was the first time in my life where I felt like I didn't know who to go to for help, and I didn't know what to do. And I was willing to ask for it. I was asking for it. But I wasn't getting the help that I needed when I was asking for it, and that was terrifying.
Yeah. So how long did all of this take then? Too long?
So, way too long. This started for me 9 years ago now, and I'm still not 100%. I'm about 70% better than I was 9 years ago. And very thankful to be where I am now, but it took a long, a long time to get there, and that should not be the norm. And I've discovered since then that it is increasingly the norm. And unfortunately, it's simply because our conventional medicine system is not equipped to handle these kinds of health issues, chronic issues. I mean, issues that stem out of some imbalance in the body. It's not an infection. It's not a distinct disease or pathogen that they can treat with a medication or whatnot, some kind of intervention. It's not a broken bone. They can't piece you back together. They're great at that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these more amorphous symptoms like brain fog and low energy and fatigue and pain in various parts of the body, but nothing visual, they don't know how to help. And it's not their fault. That's just the education they received or didn't receive. But that led me to going on a quest to figure it out myself. But before I got there, things had to get worse for me in order for them to get better. And I was doing my best, like, don't get me wrong, to figure out what I wanted to, ways to figure out how to help myself. And I saw, an ear, nose, throat doctor who specialized in vertigo, and he helped give me some options of supplements and some medications too, but I wasn't interested in a medication at the time. A B2 vitamin helped a lot to manage my vertigo, taking that every day. Then a neurologist specializing in migraine that was recommended to me by a colleague. She helped me a lot. She suggested magnesium because migraine, it's presumed that I have migraine-associated vertigo. There's no specific test for it.
Okay.
But at least that vertigo piece, which was really the the stomach pain and the vertigo were kind of the biggest pieces for me, the most affecting. And she explained that some people inherit usually this kind of migraine brain. It's just the way that the brain operates neurologically that's different from other people. And that creates migraines, or it can create vertigo without the migraines, which is
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Not something I'd ever heard of or been aware of before.
No, me either.
Yeah. Uh, so she was a wealth of information, and also one of the first people to kind of look at me as a whole human being and with great compassion and empathy and understanding. And um, she offered that magnesium supplement could help with my sleep, which was making everything worse.
Yeah. I take both of those supplements that you say already.
Yeah, a lot of people do. And
Yeah.
there are reasons for that too. Our classic American diet is deficient in a lot of things now, just because the way agriculturally we're set up and whatnot. But that's a whole other podcast, I think. But magnesium helped with improve my sleep quality, so less interrupted throughout the night. I had more energy the next day, and it reduced the flare-ups that I had, which was
Hmm.
great. So it gave me
Yeah.
more to work with. It wasn't an end-all be-all, but it helped so much. Um, and then it also helped with the stomach pain some and brain fog. It gave me more clarity mentally. So it helped me to feel like myself a little bit more and
Uh-huh.
feel a little bit more confident in my own skin again. Um,
Did they
I
ever figure
also,
out why all this got triggered, or was it just one of those things?
um, there was no definitive answer. And these things are kind of hard to nail down that way. It's not
Yeah.
A plus B equals C kind of equation. Um, but the thinking was, I eventually found a functional medicine doctor, and that functional medicine doctor walked through my whole health history and was able to kind of pinpoint these main events that happened that she thinks contributed and triggered everything else for me. And I'll talk more about that. But first, I want to say what kind of led up to finding the functional medicine doctor, because I think that's really important for somebody who's
Yeah.
struggling as I was at that point.
I've never even heard of a functional medicine doctor, so please.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That changed my world. I want to be one now.
Oh, I
But one
love
thing at a
that.
time.
One thing at a
Yeah.
time. Yep.
um, so the ear, nose, throat doctor, the neurologist, they helped. A mindfulness specialist and a sleep therapist helped, particularly with I acquired intense anxiety around the fact that I was not sleeping properly, which prevented me from sleeping even more.
Of
So I would
course.
go to bed. Yeah, I'd go to bed thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to sleep. Oh my God, like, I'm feeling a little pain in my neck. This is going to throw me off, etc. This whole like negative cyclical
Hmm.
thought pattern that just didn't give me any chance. So the sleep therapist helped me to implement more better sleep habits, better sleep hygiene. I hadn't heard that term at the time, but that's what it means. Better sleep habits, like only using your bedroom for sleep and making sure that you like turn the lights down lower at night, do something to wind down or relax at night. And generally we kind of know these things, but we don't really do them a lot of the time.
Hmm.
So some of them were news to me, and some of them were just had fallen out of practice because of life and, adjusting to being out of college, which was erratic in every way in terms of schedule. So those things helped me, as did I wasn't interested in taking medications at the time. I didn't want a quick fix. I really wanted to find the answer of what was wrong with me. But I did need something to help. And so a low dose of mirtazapine was prescribed to me, it's technically an antidepressant, but it was used for the neck pain
Hmm.
that kept me up at night. And that helped dramatically to improve my sleep quality as well. So these little things helped me build. And then I kind of felt like, okay, I feel like I can handle a little bit more in my life. And I joined a local choir. I've been a long time musician, and that's given me so much joy as a person. Always, I was a pianist and a singer, and I still am. I'm actually in a local jazz band now, and it's filling me up like nothing else.
Yeah,
But
because hell, when you talk about it, it makes you very happy.
oh yeah, oh yeah, because it makes you feel like something bigger than
Yeah.
yourself. And at that time, I really, really needed that. So I went, once a week into a room full of 50-ish people, all singing around me, feeling like a piece of a whole. When I felt like I was missing pieces of myself. And that made a big difference in feeding me with this really good positive energy that helped me propel me forward, and felt like don't underestimate the power of things that give you joy in life, the things that you might put aside in instances where you're struggling. I think you need those things more at that time than any other time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that gave me the happy energy to keep going. And I was implementing slowly, newer, healthier habits in terms of my lifestyle and diet and everything else. And a lot of trial and error, figuring out how to manage when flares did happen and whatnot. And I was managing better. And that was when all hell broke loose. That was when the shit got really real, as your
Oh no.
podcast says. Because all of my symptoms suddenly got much worse, and I didn't know why. I was thinking, maybe it's some kind of flare up, but it wasn't like normal. I was extremely fatigued, extreme brain fog. I could not think in even more severely of a way than before. And it was, again, really scary to me. And I was figuring out what I wanted to do as a career, and I was in a different job. And this happened, I don't know, 6 months into the job or something like that. And I was afraid. I didn't know if I should talk to my boss or tell her what was happening, because I didn't know if I would be judged and how that would be received, and I didn't want to be fired, and etc. I did my best, but unfortunately, I was fired. And a week later, I got my labs back, and it showed that I had Lyme disease. And I was like, oh. I felt a range of emotions, because I felt relieved that I didn't have to keep pushing myself so hard, because I knew something was very, very wrong. I felt like what I was feeling and thinking at the time, everything was affirmed by getting a diagnosis on paper. I knew I wasn't crazy, because when you're struggling for so long, you feel like everything's happening in your head, maybe, or what if you're making it up, even though all these things are happening to your body. You start to doubt everything.
Yeah.
Because everything you previously knew to be true isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But I also felt freed, because it gave me an opportunity to rest and to figure out what was going on, and find my own two feet a little bit, both in terms of the Lyme disease and in terms of myself, because being fired from a job, I got to tell you, was not in my agenda.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
And I was a perfectionist, and I'd always had been. And I was so concerned with pleasing everybody around me all the time, especially family, especially friends, but anybody. I was terrified of judgment, and I lived my life in a way that was very limiting, therefore. And then I got fired, and that's a very big thing to, people judge you about.
Yeah.
And this is my first time sharing that publicly. It took me a while to be okay
To be able
with
to talk
that.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not that I don't care about people's judgment. I still do, sure. But I don't care more than I do now. And so I'm able to talk about that.
Good for you.
Thank you. And so that felt good in some ways, and then bad in others, because then I was stressing about money and medical care and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID happened.
Of course.
And
why not throw that in there?
Which I think was about the time you started your podcast, right?
Yeah, not too long after. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody knows what that was like, being kind of shut in and fearful. And I was particularly fearful of getting worse, because I had experienced that anytime I caught a bug, like a cold or anything, it would flare up my symptoms dramatically. So I was really afraid in terms of COVID, which was even more than just your common cold. And I kept myself shut in more. And, I was also around, the people that I was around the most were unfortunately pretty depressed. so that I did my best to help them, and I was happy to, but it was a lot to take on when I was already in a place where I was struggling so severely.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of person that feels everything very deeply, and
Mhm.
I felt what they were feeling, and that just didn't help lift me up. It dragged me down further, and not in a blaming way at all. It wasn't their fault, obviously,
Mhm.
but that was the situation. And then a close family member was hospitalized. And I did not sleep much at all when that was happening. And then a close friend was hospitalized, and I didn't sleep much at all when that was happening.
Mhm.
And I couldn't go to Croatia to visit my family, of course, because of all the restrictions with COVID. And then my grandfather overseas passed away.
Ugh. All the
So it
things.
was fun. Yeah, I was a really fun person, at that time.
Oh man, you poor thing.
uh,
See, but
you
look,
know,
you can laugh at it now, which is good.
yes. Oh, I
That
can.
means
You have
you
to.
found you. Yeah, that means you found your place. So,
Mm-hmm.
there's that. But yes, at
Mm-hmm.
the time, not so happy.
No. So the shit absolutely got freaking real.
Yeah, I would say so.
And I felt more out of control than I ever had, not in control of what was going on in my life than I ever had. And being a perfectionist is like maintaining control.
Mhm.
um, so that led to me having a first really unhealthy thought of like, maybe I'm not meant to do this.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm not meant to like be living, and that was not a healthy thought to have.
No.
And as soon as I had it, it was like a bell went off in my head, an alarm bell, because I could very clearly see that that was not a thought that old me would have had. Old Katerina never thought that way, never thought that life maybe didn't have value. That was not something she'd ever considered before, or ever believed before, or ever thought before. And that was so far removed from who I knew myself to be, the little part of myself that I knew myself to be, that I was able to recognize it despite where I was then. And it made me realize I needed to fix things because nobody was coming to save me. I had to
Mhm.
do this myself. It was not my fault, but it was my responsibility. And that was a big thing for me a big realization for me to come to and swallow and digest and then act on. But it just reached a point of being really fed up. I
Yeah,
was
I
so
bet.
fed up with going through this Groundhog Day of fighting myself to get out of bed, fighting myself to go take a shower, fighting myself to go drive to work, fighting myself to go do the work that I was being paid to do that I hoped to keep, drive home, make dinner, go back to bed, but I would collapse on my bed for an hour and a half because I was so out of energy that I didn't have.
Mhm.
And then go to bed late and not sleep well and repeat. I was struggling so immensely hard that I couldn't share it with those closest to me at that time because I was so embarrassed. I felt I felt like a shell of myself. I think is the best way to put it. I wasn't doing anything. Like all those things I just listed about going through my day, those are your bare necessities.
Mhm.
You have to wake up, you have to shower, you have to feed yourself, go to work, sleep. And even those things I wasn't doing great. And nobody I knew was experiencing that. So I was afraid of judgment. Again, as a perfectionist, I was really, really, really afraid of judgment. And I was just terrified. I was so lost as a person, and I didn't know what to do to get better. But that moment that I had that thought and I got properly fed up with this Groundhog Day that was just god awful, that was when I refocused my energy on something that I could do. I was constantly thinking about, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. Gets you nowhere.
Mhm.
What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I started introducing that thought pattern, and I did that by writing a lot in a journal to myself to work through all these thoughts, to work through all these feelings in a tangible way. It's a way
Mm-hmm.
that I could get clarity, understand them, do my best, and to learn not to judge them. I was judging myself harshly too for how I was doing, which did not help.
No.
No.
Journaling is very powerful, for sure.
Yeah. I'm glad that that's something that people are doing more and more now, because I think it's a fantastic reflective process, and
Absolutely.
it allows you the opportunity to take control.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's what I did. And I started just taking honest stock, trying to remove judgment, try to create these new positive thought patterns to get me out of that ditch first and foremost. One of the first things I did was taking a daily walk. Massively hard given how I was feeling physically, mentally. The last thing you want to do is go out on a walk, especially I'm in Massachusetts. It's freaking cold here most of the time. So I was like, okay, put on the boots, put on the socks, put on the jacket, put on the next jacket, put on the next jacket, put the hats, the gloves. I was like, oh, but I did it. And every single time I did it, I didn't regret it.
Nope.
It felt so good to move my body. And I found that in moving my body, I moved my mind, because I could see, it forced you to see outside yourself. You go outside your front door, especially when I was, again, trapped in one space, both because of how I was feeling and COVID and whatever at the time, right? You feel so trapped. But if you go outside your door, you are literally forced to see a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly you see outside of your house, outside of the place that you feel trapped. And you have different thoughts because you physically moved your head from where it was before. And so I'm walking around, and I've always found great peace and grounding in being in nature. And I think that's just a natural thing for human beings. But, hearing the birds and hearing the leaves and seeing the colors, and when it was warmer, seeing the flowers in neighbors' gardens. And I made a point of finding beauty, finding positive things every day. And that helped me change my thought patterns. And changing my thought patterns then helped me see possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I can get better. Maybe I can heal. Maybe there is a way out of this. And then I started believing it. And my actions followed. I changed my beliefs. I changed myself. And I started changing myself mentally before I started changing myself physically. And I think that's a big distinction in healing. I think a lot of attention is given to just the body often,
Yes.
and there's not attention given to who you are and your mind and what brings you joy, all those other parts of that make up who you are as a person, what make you feel alive, um, what make you feel like you have value, what make you happy, plain and simple.
Yeah.
And in focusing on that, I moved myself forward, and the daily walk improved my mood, changed my perspective. Then I did meditation. That helped a great deal for me. And I was stuck in this fight or flight kind of state because I'd been sick for so long. And it's very
Mm-hmm.
different, when you're a kid, or when you're not having chronic illness, but you're sick. You think none of these things happen because it's a short-term thing. You go to the doctor, or you just rest at home and eat your fluids, drink your fluids, and have good food, and you're going to get better. It's
Yep.
fine. But with this, it's long term. And so long term, at the beginning, you think you're going to get better. Then there's the time where you realize, uh-oh, I've been this way for a while. Something's wrong. Maybe I'm not going to get better. And then longer than that, and you don't believe that you're going to get better anymore. And your body's stuck in this fight or flight mode, and it's not supposed to be. But it
No.
affects how your body responds.
Yeah. I
And
remember hearing from, I think it was another guest talking about how we're the only ones that have the ability to turn our flight or flight on and off. Like in animals, it's very natural
yeah,
and it only happens when they need it. And then the moment it goes off, they literally forget about the event. So, like, if a deer is being chased by a predator, the moment it's over, they're not worried that the predator is going to come back. They just move on, which is very different than our
exactly.
fight or flight.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's spot on. Um, that's exactly it. It's just part of our evolutionary nature, and unfortunately, our current or fortunately, we don't have to fight for our lives and run from like a tiger. You know what I mean? That's a good thing. But
Yes.
we found new ways to trigger that. And that includes daily stresses. It could be financial stress. It could be whatever. Anything that's a longer term stress in particular can switch that on and keep it on. And you don't even realize it until a physical manifestation happens, or you notice a big change in yourself mentally or some other way. And that's accounting for, I think, a great deal of the chronic diseases and chronic illnesses we have now, especially the autoimmune ones. Autoimmune means that your body thinks it needs to fight itself. Like, hear that for a second. Your body thinks it needs to fight itself. That's so messed up. That's definitely not the way that we're supposed to be.
No, definitely not.
You are not your own worst enemy in this
No.
particular instance, you know? And so, yeah, realizing that and working on doing things like meditation that bring me down to my center and calm me and ground me was enormously helpful. And helped me release control and explore self-limiting behaviors and beliefs that I had, like perfectionism, like victimhood, feeling like, you know, I was the victim of my circumstances and that I had no control, like identifying with my illness, where I saw no distinction between my illness and myself. We were one, and I was it, and it was me. And that prohibits the possibility of healing if you can't even distinguish yourself from what you're experiencing. And then I made other changes, more holistically minded. And again, I think that's so important when talking with people who are experiencing these long-term challenges. You need to look at the whole person and what they're dealing with. And I mentioned I was around people who were also depressed. I changed my environment. I spent more time with people who weren't, and also who were more health conscious and health focused even. And so I'm surrounded by that. And they say you're surrounded that you are who you're surrounded by, the five people closest to you or something like that. And I think that there's definitely logic to that, because what you're around, you start to absorb, and gives you the courage to try yourself. And so I did more exercise, and gosh, that's a big lifesaver in terms of things like brain fog and clarifying energy and feeling capable and strong. Especially as a woman, being like lifting weights and things made me feel so like powerful within myself. I wasn't doing it for any like, I didn't want to look a certain way or anything. I was just doing it because I wanted to feel stronger. And I did. And that's such a good, again, like the choir, great, happy, reinforcing, positive energy. And yeah, so all these kinds of lifestyle changes and things, and helped me kind of rebuild a more stable sense of identity on a more stable infrastructure, on things that, on values that I had chosen to adopt now. I was in favor of imperfect action. I was in favor of a changeable self, and a self that was distinct from my experiences. I was no longer viewed myself as the victim of my circumstances. All these things gave me the power to change myself and find more stability every day, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and allowed me to more effectively pursue answers. And that was really key for me. And I eventually found functional medicine. And functional medicine is medicine based around a root cause approach to what's going on with you in the body. So they're interested in what's causing everything, versus conventional medicine. They're focused on treating the symptoms of what you're experiencing, usually with medication. And I think I mentioned I wasn't really interested in medication. That just wasn't something I wanted to do. And it seemed like a Band-Aid solution to me. And it usually is. And that was a totally different experience. I sat down with this functional medicine doctor, and we had an initial appointment, and it was 3 to 4 hours long that she talked to me. I'd never been talked to that long by a doctor. Nobody had given me that time of day. and it needed to be done. And she
Mm-hmm.
walked through my whole health history, and starting from when I was a baby, and what kind of a birth was it? Because that could inform, for example, if you're a vaginal birth versus a C-section. C-section, you don't get the benefit of the good gut, the good flora, the good healthy probiotics. And that helps you as a baby create your first immune system, and that could cause problems later in life. So little details that I, obviously wasn't aware of, but she's versed in functional medicine, and so these are the things that this is the realm she operates in. Asking me questions from then to, did I have motion sickness as a child? Yes, that's a commonly linked with vertigo later on. It could be inner ear, it could be migraine, who knows? But these are important bits of information to gather. We eventually kind of found that the most important bits of information for me were, yes, motion sickness as a child. That's exceedingly common in people who later have vertigo later in life, and particularly migraine-associated vertigo. And there are a host of vitamin supplements that people usually take, and it usually takes a lot of trial and error to figure out the combination and the amounts that work best for you. But for me, the B2 was enough, and it was enough to help me operate. And I rarely have episodes of vertigo now, knock on wood, I'm extremely happy to say.
Yay.
Yeah. I have a sense of off balance a little bit still every day, but it's no longer severe. I can go around my day, go to the grocery store, go to work, etc., and it's not debilitating. For me, that was enough. And for other people, it takes more trial and error. As far as the rest of the symptoms that were going on with me, we kind of determined that I had appendicitis and mono at the same time, a year and a half or so before my symptoms started. And that was a fun time too. And I had a host of antibiotics at that time to help treat that. And the thinking is, anytime you have antibiotics, they knock out all of your good gut bacteria as well as the bad pathogenic bacteria. And getting rid of the bad stuff is good, but getting rid of the good stuff means that once you've taken the antibiotics and you're back to normal, it's easier for new viruses and new bacteria or new pathogens to invade and take over. And so the thinking is that my body just didn't recover enough. And when I was in Croatia, I was exposed to something, possibly swimming, possibly eating, who knows. And my body just wasn't rebuilt, hadn't rebuilt enough good bacteria to handle it. And that just threw my whole body system off kilter, as well as the fact that I mentioned I was a junior. It was the junior summer of college, so I was about to enter my senior year, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was graduating with a degree in international affairs, but also a couple minors in French and anthropology, because my interests were all over the freaking place. And I had so many passions, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so the stress of that, she also factored into this imbalance and the reaction my body ended up having and not being able to handle it. And now I, at the time I had trouble maybe grasping that, but now I absolutely understand from my own personal experience and more research that I've read and understood how uniquely tied the mind is to the body, and stress manifests physically in the body if you don't deal with it.
Yes, it does.
Yes. So that was the thinking of what happened to me. So that caused leaky gut, which is when things pass through your intestinal lining, your gut lining that shouldn't. It becomes permeable. There are holes in it. There should be a good, healthy lining of gut bacteria there that I didn't have. And I did a bunch of testing with her to reinforce that diagnosis and to get more information to work with. Testing I'd never been able to have before that, showed that I have lactose intolerance, and I'm sensitive to a bunch of dairy items. I'm sensitive to like 35 odd food items. And I changed my diet to be dairy-free and gluten-free. And that made a world of difference. That alone, getting rid of dairy in particular for me, reduced brain fog almost entirely immediately.
Oh,
And I couldn't
man.
believe it.
I get it, but I love me some cheese.
Oh, I know. And that was so torturous for me at the time. Everybody says they're a foodie. No, I'm a foodie. I was the original foodie. Before they were foodies. Uh, I think I mentioned I'm from Croatia and Serbia, and God, food is so huge and part of the culture. Oh, lots of good meats, lots of good cheeses, lots of like prosciutto and seafood. Oh my God, it's amazing. And food that was like, walking or swimming yesterday. It's that fresh. It's unbelievable.
Yes, super fresh. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So it was a big mental hurdle for me to make that change. But I ended up finding that I looked at the list. I had a list that said you're sensitive to X, Y, Z, whatever, and to varying degrees, and what I should avoid for a time being. And I looked at that list, and then I considered all of the things in my cabinets and in my fridge and freezer and at the grocery store when I went next that I could eat. The list was still vastly, vastly larger what I could eat versus what I couldn't.
That's good.
Reframing that for me was very, very helpful in making that change because, again, like you, I'm very attached emotionally to food.
I mean, who doesn't love a good cheese? But, if your body doesn't like it, what are you going to do?
Right. It is what it is, but it's not a permanent thing either. I'm still dairy free and gluten free, and I've begun to experiment with introducing different foods back in, and I'm working with a nutritionist as well. And this is not a forever thing. I'm not going to be, at least the thinking and the goal is I'm not going to be dairy free forever. I'm not going to be gluten free forever. This was just to help my gut heal, to feel like it's safe, and then to slowly reintroduce things so that we're not, inundating my cells all the time with things that it thinks are dangerous. And again, flipping that fight or flight mode switch on.
Yeah. So you can fix leaky gut then. You're not permanently a sieve.
Correct. Yes, you are not permanently a sieve. No. And other dietary things help too, like aloe vera and bone broth. Those are all, they all have properties of healing the gut lining, are high in collagen, which helps heal the gut lining. I know that a lot of people are obsessed with collagen now because they say it's good for your skin, and it is. It's also good for your skin, but it also helps things in your gut. And I love it. I found things that I love as well to introduce to make that transition feel fun. And it could feel very unfun, but I think it's also important to do this, healing journey or whatever you want to call it in a way that feels good, because then you're going to want to continue doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this then led into you helping others.
Yes. So once I found the functional medicine doctor, and I found a chiropractor also helped me. I had a misalignment in my vertebrae that was contributing to making things worse for me. And like I said, I'm not 100% now, but I'm 70% better than I was 9 years ago. And while I'm going through this, I'm also exploring career-wise. I decided to take a step outside my comfort zone and assess what I really wanted to do. And I always knew I wanted to do mission-driven work. That was always important to me. I didn't know which mission to choose. And I asked myself what I thought the most important problem in the world was. And I thought it was, well, then we might not have one with the way the planet's going, the health of the planet, right? And I, however, am no scientist. And I did not get those mathematical skills from my dad or scientific skills from my dad. Sorry, Dad. But I took stock of what I did have, was a great deal of empathy, great communication skills, and open-mindedness. And I assessed, maybe you've heard of that book, like What Color is Your Parachute? Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
I worked through that book and kind of did a really in-depth assessment of myself, and helped identify what skills I could apply to that mission. And I entered the health and wellness field, first for a small farm and wellness startup. And I was driving a van around the greater Boston area, delivering food, fresh meals, and then also working from home at the computer as an account manager. And that kind of introduced me to the health and wellness realm, which I hadn't been a part of in a professional way. And I ended up working with health coaches, and we partnered with them and to move that business forward. And I'd never heard of a health coach. I was like, what's that? And I talked to them, and I was like, whoa, this is this is exactly what I needed 9 years ago. And God, I wish that I had found that 9 years ago, but better late than never.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's so totally aligned with who, what I felt I offered most as a person. And so I signed up to study with this Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and it was fantastic curriculum, very wide ranging, holistically minded, and root cause minded. They gave you an overview of absolutely everything, nutrition and beyond. And eventually I got the guts to take the plunge and start my own business, Thrive Health Coaching, and bet on myself and do my own thing, which is, again, a very far cry from what I would have done 9 years ago in terms of this perfectionist, safe mindset that I was operating from. This is very distinctly a leap in an opposite direction. And it still is. I'm still like sharing all of this with you is still nerve-wracking for me and very much outside of my comfort zone. But I feel like it's really important to be honest about this and share what my experience was, because I was so starved for that kind of information when I was struggling. I'm hoping that somebody listening to your podcast, maybe it helps them with either, finding a functional medicine doctor or finding a health coach or trying something that they didn't think they could try before, like doing something that fills them, like joining a choir or a sports team or whatever, or just open their mind to possibilities. And
Or
so
even
I
just a
started betting
simple
on
thing
myself.
that they're not alone.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It was very isolating. So that was community was something I was extra starved for, and that's definitely a common thread. So that's another big reason why I'm trying to speak more frequently about this.
Yeah,
Feeling not
and
alone is so key.
it is. And opening up and being vulnerable, because we all have vulnerable things we can speak on. So, what advice would you give to somebody that's currently dealing with an illness or a chronic illness, or just somebody looking for answers? What would you tell them?
Like, it's not a straight line, healing. And I was looking for the one, the only, the perfect answer. And I think, particularly for anybody out there who was and maybe doesn't feel like they are now, or identifies as a high achiever and very ambitious, has goals of either in their career or as a person, to travel or different dreams, whatever they are. This forces you to slow down. And if you truly want to heal, you can't you can't be looking for an immediate answer to all of your problems. There's no perfect solution. There's no immediate fix. And unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of people in the health and wellness space purporting to offer that. And maybe, I'm always open to the possibility they know something I don't know. You only know what you know. But in my experience with chronic illness specifically, there's no quick fix. You have to be committed to looking at the root cause of what's going on with you and following the thread from there. I would advise, however, what I didn't do is looking for things that provide you relief earlier on. I was very resistant, and I'm not saying medication is the answer, because I don't think that it is most of the time, but I wish that I would have maybe tried a different medication or multiple vitamin supplements or whatever, more things at once versus one thing at a time and very slowly. I wish that I would have kind of thrown a whole bunch of darts at the board and then found some relief and then kind of siphoned them off from there to figure out what was helpful and why. Because if you're struggling for such a long period of time, you desperately feel the need for that kind of relief. But another way to approach that is also as a person, like I mentioned, joining a choir, whatever, reading a book, whatever fills you, do that. Do that now. Don't wait to do that. Don't wait to live your life when you're better. Don't wait to heal and then I can do this. Screw that. Life is too freaking short do it now. You will not regret doing it now. You will regret waiting. You will regret putting off something that fills you. You will regret not feeling like how you felt before or who you want to feel now. That's what I would suggest that you focus on at this point in time. And then find a health coach. If I resonate with you, great. Reach out to me. I would be beyond thrilled to help you. But if I don't, look for somebody else and find somebody that resonates with you and work with them and get support to help you through this thing that should not be an unsupported process. It's essential in any kind of traumatic process, and I would describe this as traumatic, to get help. And you don't need to do this alone, and it shouldn't be alone, in fact. And open yourself up to possibilities by doing those things. And again, I mentioned the mindset that I had at the time, the sense of being a victim and the sense of needing to be perfect all the time, and the sense of identifying with my illness and not being able to see beyond that. All of those things were things that I could have worked on earlier by myself. I wish I had help, because it took such a long time to do it on my own. But those were things I could have worked on earlier if I had been open-minded enough to work on them earlier. And I know it's incredibly difficult to be open-minded with where the people are, in the sense that I'm describing where I was 9 years ago. But I would invite you to try that anyway, and to do that in whatever way feels doable to you.
Yeah. And for anybody that does resonate with you, how can they get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is on my website, thrivehealthcoaching.com. And I do offer a free consult for folks, so that you can talk to me about what's going on with you, what you want to do, what your goals might be, and how I might be able to help you get there. And if I can't, or I don't think I'm the right person to help you, I'll try to help you point in the direction of somebody or something I think can help. Absolutely. Otherwise, I'm also on all of the social media platforms, and I'll give you the links so that you could put that maybe in the show notes for folks.
Yeah.
But YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever, I'm all there. Thrive Health
All
Coaching.
the places.
All the places.
Thank you so much, Katerina, for being here. I appreciate you and all your wonderful advice.
Thank you so much, Rita. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for being here. This is How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real. I'll see y'all next episode.